So you may be noticing I don't look like Martine, not nearly as glamorous, beautiful. She gave me a call last night and left a message, and I called back and she said, "Text me, please." And we traded texts, and it sounded like, well, she thinks she has food poisoning and like she maybe wasn't going to make it. But the way I like to roll with this is to leave open the possibility that she'll rally, which many times in the past she has, right? Including when when she was first diagnosed and they told her that she couldn't preach, right? And she did. She rose to the occasion. She did, she preached and she did it every time since then. And anyway, so I reached out to Rev Laura and to see if she could do it, but she had uh, a family commitment, something with her nephew or something, and wasn't possible. And so then I talked to Martine for 50 minutes this morning, and in hopes that she would rally. And but meanwhile, I had gotten up at 5:30 and started to collect my thoughts just in case. And at the end of our conversation, I said, "Well, just send me what you wrote, Martine, and I'll read that." And she said, "Well, given everything we talked about, Raleigh, you don't need what I wrote, and you can just talk about what we talked about." And um, I said, "Well, but just send me what you wrote anyway." And she said, "Well, I actually haven't written anything. I usually do in advance, but it's been a crazy week, and I haven't. But the title was going to be The Power of Consciousness. So my talk is about the power of consciousness, and Martine kind of summarizing our conversation. She raised the idea of unexpected paths and allowing our lives to be guided, right? To not lose hope and to trust in the flow. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I had a bunch of notes that I had written this morning. And then I kind of, after getting out of the shower, I went, no, what I'm supposed to do is turn to, so Rev Carlos had mentioned Eric Butterworth and the book that his mom, Norma Jean, had first gotten for him, which led him to move to New York. And it's Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth. And anyway, so I'm gonna use that as a kind of architecture for talking about this. So the first chapter in this in the book is called The Eternal Quest. And he begins with the words, "The hope of mankind today lies in the great undiscovered depths within." Now, I think it's fair to say that's still true, maybe more true today. He wrote this book in 1968. And so he says in 1968, he writes, "Viewing the vastness of the universe, we tend to become confused when we seem to be losing our identity. But we must remember that the universe has meaning because we have meaning, and we have meaning because the universe has meaning. All discovery is self-discovery, and all knowledge is self-knowledge. Thus, the greatest discovery in science is not the outward accomplishments, but the inward revelation and the truth that sets us free to take the outer step." This is all being the leaps forward in the 1960s in science. He says this is all being made possible because of the discoveries within matter, which are actually spiritual discoveries. So I'm fond of so we now know that so we live in Eric Butterworth also wrote a book called The Universe is Calling. Well, the universe is a very big place, right? There are 100 billion, this is what they think. Maybe it'll change in the future because it certainly changed in the past, but the universe has 100 billion galaxies, and our galaxy, the Milky Way, has 100 billion stars. That's a lot of space. And yet it's all right. The nature of all of it is, in his view, in our view, is God. Right. So these principles infuse that we repeat every week, they infuse everything in that entire vast 100 billion of 100 billion. Very big number. I don't know what that number is. I'm not sure I would know how to say it if I did know. He goes on, what we have called, quote, space is really a presence. For there is one continuous, unified, intelligent, and inexhaustible potential that here and there precipitates itself as that which we call matter. So this fits with the third unity principle. I create my experiences by the activity of my thinking, and that shift in thinking changes stuff out there too. He says, thus the ultimate of our research into the universe around us must come from the knowledge of the mind that sustains it, God mind, the mind in which it actually has its only existence. And the study of mind can only be done through introspection, self-contemplation, and spiritual research. In the words of Tennyson, self-reverence, self-knowledge, self-control, these three alone lead to sovereign life. And you've heard many times Reverend Carlos give his God is in heaven, heaven is in you. I like to reframe it as specifically, right, just like the prayer for protection, doing it, the light of God surrounds me, right? So I like, God is in heaven, heaven is in me, as in each of you. Holy is my name. God wants me to know that I have nothing to fear and that there is nothing and no one to blame. I've been informed. My captivity is over. I've been informed. In truth, I am free. So now leaping forward in Discover the Power Within You, he has a chapter 7, that is entitled, Your Thought is Your Life. And it begins with a Charles Fillmore quote, which goes as follows: God's greatest gift to man is the power of thought, through which he can incorporate into his consciousness the mind of God. Right? That's principle number 4. So he talks about how human knowledge is multiplying at a faster and faster pace. He says man's total body of, this is in 1968, man's total body of knowledge doubled between 1775 and 1900. It doubled again between 1900 and 1950, again between 1950 and 1958, and it is now thought to be doubling every 5 years. Well, it's surely doubling a lot faster than that now, and that's one of the great challenges that we face, is that we're drowning in information, we're drowning in facts, but the most important thing is not facts. So Butterworth says it is important to recognize that discoveries in the world around us are really self-discoveries. Back to chapter 1. We do not create the growing body of knowledge. Man is simply gaining insights into that which has already been. The universe was already there before we invented the telescopes sufficient for us to have a better grasp of what's going on out there. Nothing has really changed in the nature of the universe in the past 2,000 years, but we have opened our eyes to see things more completely. Locked within the super consciousness of man are the answers to all the problems and the secret of all the mysteries that mankind can ever face. Man is a thinking being. The very word man comes from an ancient Sanskrit word, which literally means to think. I'd read that before and, several times, and I'd completely forgotten it. Through thinking, man has the possibility of knowing God and expressing the wisdom of divine mind. Man is the greatest concentration of divine energies in the universe. He is the greatest natural resource, and the world of possibilities within man is still the great frontier. As within, so without. Right? So we don't achieve these things. We don't achieve the five principles. It's really about an inside game, which affects what's external, but it's done, and it's the still small voice and the being called to pray in secret. So then he goes on to talk about the mind is the bridge between man and the infinite. The important element in religion is not simply fervency and feeling, but man's thoughts and attitudes. And he says, Jesus's Sermon on the Mount is the most articulate and practical outline of metaphysical truth known to man. The object is not so much man in general, but you in particular. And right, so the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount is, ye are the salt of the earth. Well, what does that mean? So Butterworth goes on to say that salt isn't the thing on its own. Salt is the thing that brings out the flavor in all the other, it brings out the flavor in the food. And if you use too much salt, you ruin the food. But salt on its own, really, not much. Although Carol would argue with that. She really likes salt. So he goes on, the truth is dynamic, not static. Your knowledge of the truth must first all lead to self-knowledge. In your study of the truth, remember, with all thy getting, get understanding. If we collect truth like we collect facts, fill our notebooks with pages of notes, fill our library with books, cover our walls with certificates of courses of study we have taken, then certainly the salt will lose its flavor. And so that's the truth versus facts. Salt of itself is a useless food. Its value is in seasoning nourishing food and in whetting the appetite. Many otherwise sincere students of quote unquote the way are overread and underdone. Jesus challenges you, the student, to accept the responsibility of bringing the spiritual leaven of truth to the world. So, for me, I think I've done a lot of reading. I have a lot of books, right? But I have lots of room for improvement in this respect, right? In the respect of being tuned to this stuff that's not really, it can't be fixed by taking more courses or by reading more books. Although the books can help open, it's actually, I'm going to jump back to, I think he does in this first chapter. And you've heard me read this before. So Robert Browning, in his poem Paracelsus, about the great Swiss Renaissance Swiss physician and metaphysician, truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whate'er you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all where truth abides in fullness, and around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in. This perfect, clear perception, which is truth, a baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all error. And to know rather consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without. So our thinking is what is tuned or not tuned, right, to the God channel. And it is so easy to become tuned to the problems of the world. And so I'm going to skip forward in terms of the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, your thought is your life. If someone is getting in your hair or under your skin, I'm going to read this. A Chinese proverb says, a man may not be able to prevent birds from flying over his head, but he has a right to determine whether they shall make nests in his hair. If someone is getting in your hair or under your skin, I could have used this advice this week. Oh my goodness. If someone is getting in your hair or under your skin, it is because you are violating the spiritually upgraded commandment, thou shalt not kill. Right? This is about judge not lest ye be judged. The person may be outwardly annoying, but when he becomes annoying to you, it is your thought about him that is the problem. Change this thought and you will change the whole experience. And I think that's enough of me talking today. And so now it's time for the band and our Heart and Soul song.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Thank you, Raleigh.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Raleigh.